Guys, welcome to this running back tier list. In this video, I'm going to be ranking running backs in order of the likelihood they can be the RB1. I mean, isn't that essentially what we're doing when we create rankings anyway? It's like, let's rank these players in descending order of the highest likelihood that they can finish as the number one at their position. That's essentially what rankings are, right? So what I'm going to do is I want to kind of bucket these guys into like likelihood categories, and it kind of reflects my rankings to begin with. So let's just go ahead and hop into it, guys. We're going to start from the top because I mean, it just makes the most sense, right? And looking over at my list, we have CMC and Eckler. CMC and Eckler are the two guys that I imagine both being RB1, assuming they play all 17 games and assuming they carry on the role that they had last season. Those are the only two things that I'm really going to go off of because we don't really know anything else, right? We don't know how the offense is going to look. We don't know who's going to be the QB in San Francisco. Let's break this down player by player. So in San Francisco, we don't know who their quarterback is going to be. It looks like it might be Brock Purdy in week 1. We don't know Elijah Mitchell's involvement, but we do know that when Elijah Mitchell was involved, CMC's numbers weren't that great, right? But you can say that, okay, CMC was new to the team. Elijah Mitchell was recently the main guy for them. So it would have been kind of messed up if they phased him out, like, the second CMC walks into the building. We just don't know. But we do know CMC is probably the most talented pound for pound running back. He's on one of the best rushing teams in the NFL. And I think the 49ers just figure it out and they're like, you know what? Just put the ball in his hands. Good things happen when CMC has the ball. Why are we manufacturing a split backfield when we know that CMC is the better running back? Elijah Mitchell truthers, hit me in the comments. I mean, you guys know it's true, so I don't know. Anyway, we'll head on over to Eckler. Eckler's another one of those guys. He will be on a top offense, a top passing offense. We'll see how their rushing offense is. But that doesn't really matter much for Eckler, right? He's a receiving running back. So he's on a top offense. He is a true 3-down back. At least we've seen him as a 3-down back. I didn't think he was for the longest time, but he's a true 3-down back. He catches the ball. He is their goal line back now. So there's really no flaws in Eckler's game other than the fact that he is undersized and he's small, and he's now had 2 seasons of a full lion's share workload. Is that going to start catching up to him? I think he's 27 years old. I don't know. Maybe not. I think he's got another good season in him. So that's why I have him as likely. All right, we'll carry on now. And another thing, the reason why these guys are likely top overall finish players is because both of them catch the ball. That's pretty much all it is. So if you're in any type of half PPR or PPR league, that is the likelihood scenario, or that is the scenarios in which these guys should finish as the top running backs. So next on my list, we'll head over to Nick Chubb, who's my 3rd ranked RB. Now, Nick Chubb, I was debating on whether I should put him in the likely category because a lot of reports out of camp are that he's going to be a passing weapon. He's going to be a receiving weapon for the Browns. Now, we already know he's one of the best pure rushing running backs. If he can add any amount of receiving acumen, that's crazy. Think Derrick Henry 2 seasons ago, when I think his average reception or target total was 25 targets per season. And randomly 2 seasons ago, he got 50 targets and he was popping the fuck off and then broke his foot. So if Nick Chubb can get anywhere from, 40 to 50 targets or receptions rather, that's going to be wild. That's going to be like an Alvin Kamara plus rushing upside. I think that if he can hit those numbers, if he can hit them, and that's why I call it the ceiling category. If he can hit those numbers, top overall RB, that should be a better offense with Deshaun Watson having another offseason and all of last season to get used to the offense, to understand the playbook, to kind of shake the rust off and to be back to what we know he could be. So with all those things in mind, I think Nick Chubb is a pretty safe ceiling pick. And the next guy on my list is going to be Bijan Robinson. Where is his face? There he is. So Bijan Robinson, the Falcons were, I think, the number 2 rushing offense last season. They now upgrade their running back, and they bring in Bijan Robinson with, massive draft capital in this year's draft. He's one of the most talented college prospects that we've seen in a while. However, it does feel like we say that almost every season about somebody. So I don't really know what that means. But by a lot of experts, they say that he's one of the better prospects. He's joining one of the better rushing offenses. They should have an improvement at quarterback, and they're bringing in Desmond Ridder, who's more of a traditional pocket passer, which is actually good news for the rushing attack, right? Because Mariota was stealing some rushing productivity from that backfield. You now slot Tyler Algier to more of like a complimentary back. He'll get his 6 to 10 touches a game. Might vulture a couple touchdowns, but I do think it's going to be Bijan getting, the lion's share on most, valuable drives. He's going to get receiving work. He's going to get goal line work. The offense as a whole should be better. I think if Bijan Robinson hits those target and rushing attempt ceilings, he could be the RB1 overall, right? It's one of those things where CMC and Eckler are not such surefire hits that Bijan could hit it if those other guys kind of, fuck around, and Elijah Mitchell's more involved and Eckler's a little bit too banged up, too small, whatever. So that's why I put him in the ceiling play. Next guy is going to be Saquon Barkley. Not too much to say about Saquon. The offense as a whole was better last season. Saquon is still one of the better pure running backs in the league, both receiving and rushing. He gets most of the work, if not all of the work, for the Giants. That should continue again this season. He just got a 1-year contract, so they're going to be using him. They're going to use him. They're going to use him into the ground, possibly, because after this 1-year contract, if Saquon looks hampered or if he gets injured, they can easily write him off and say, okay, we gave you the contract, you got injured, we're done, we're moving on. So I think it's in the Giants' interest to kind of just overuse him, which is kind of fucked up to say, but I can envision that happening. And if Saquon remains as involved as he was in prior seasons, a top overall RB finish is definitely in the cards on an improved Giants offense. They bring in Darren Waller, who should help open up the field. Another season of Wan'Dale Robinson, hopefully cementing himself, being, getting healthy and being effective from the short yardage, short range routes. Who else do they have there? Sterling Shepard. I guess it's really Darren Waller, Sterling Shepard, and Wan'Dale, right? Hodges, not really. I wouldn't really even mention him, but yeah. So if all works out, there's not too much offensive mouths to feed, so I can see Saquon definitely popping off. And the next guy is going to be Josh Jacobs. Now, this category is called There's a Path. That basically means if last year's production continues and if they can continue to do what they were doing before, there's a path that they can finish. And that path could mean a lot of things. It could mean the guys ahead of them don't reach their ceilings, injuries happen, the offense that they're on is actually better than we expected. So in Josh Jacobs' case, we don't know how the offense is going to look. We do know Jacobs will still be a part of the same system he was in last season, where running the ball is a focal point, and having a true workhorse back is another focal point. And we saw that last year with Josh Jacobs. I think led the league in rush attempts, led the league in yardage, was the number 2 overall fantasy RB. If that can continue, and if Jimmy G can just be decent, I can see Josh Jacobs repeating what he did last season. And if he was the number 2 last season, he could definitely be the number 1 this season. But kind of a lot of things would have to happen, right? A lot of the dudes ahead of him, I think, would have to fall off or fuck up. And the next guy on the list is going to be Derrick Henry. Where's Derrick Henry? Here he is. So I have some concerns with Derrick Henry. He's 28 years old, or 29 actually. He's got a lot of yardage on his engine, a lot. He has quite a lot of rush attempts under his belt, a lot of production, and a couple of injuries in the last 2 seasons. So that's slightly concerning. The Titans offense as a whole isn't that great, and yet Henry has been able to overcome that. He's one of the only running backs in the past 15 plus years who was able to produce at the rate he's been producing, despite the fact that the offense he's on is a bottom 3rd offense every season. It's actually fucking crazy. You can make the argument he's the best running back almost ever because of that fact. He's been so fucking productive despite the fact that their offense is so bad. I just think that's impressive. Derrick Henry, there's a path. If he can continue getting the same workload, if he can continue being the workhorse, if the Titans offense can make any types of steps forward where he doesn't have to then be an outlier yet again, I can imagine him being the top overall RB. There's a path. Next guy on the list is going to be Tony Pollard. Now, Tony Pollard has his concerns. He's always been a three down, or more accurately, he's been a receiving back for most of his career, with Ezekiel Elliott taking most of the first, second, and goal line work. He's now stepping into a workhorse role. The Dallas Cowboys are expected to not be that prolific or that great on offense like they have been in past seasons. Now, Dak Prescott, if he can get his interceptions down, if CeeDee Lamb can take another step, if Gallup can finally do something, if Cooks can kind of open up the vertical game, the Dallas offense should be good. I don't think Dak Prescott's a bum. I don't think their team I think their coaching is actually pretty excellent offensively. So I think Tony Pollard, if he is the workhorse, and they don't really give a lot of run to like Malik Davis, even if they bring Zeke back, I still imagine him being kind of a complimentary back to Pollard. If all of those things happen and he can basically, his numbers based on his volume were crazy. If we can now just dial his volume up and have his numbers not be too affected, obviously efficiency will go down. But if he can still remain a very efficient yards per carry, and if he can still be very like productive when he does get the ball, and we just increase the amount he gets the ball, number one overall is definitely in the cards. The Dallas offense should be good enough, right? They'll be top 12, I imagine. Maybe middle, I don't know. Like, middle half of the NFL, possibly. But that's why I think there's a path. He would still need a lot of guys ahead of him to kind of fall off. But there's a realistic path. I was actually considering putting Pollard in the ceiling category because I just can't imagine the Cowboys being bad. Just with their team, with their defense, with their offense as a whole, the personnel they have. They'd have to really royally fuck up, and Dak would have to be garbage again for them to not be, in the top 15 or the top 12 or even the top 10. So that's why I got Pollard there. I might even put him here at the front of this There's a Path list. And next guy, there's two more guys in this category. It's going to be, this is going to be spicy, but it's Joe Mixon. So Joe Mixon, the only issue with Joe Mixon is legal shit, right? Legal problems. There's another report that there was a gun involved. Police investigation was opened up again recently, I believe. If Joe Mixon can just get out of the woods, if he can get clear of all this, he's going to be on a top 5 offense. He's going to be a workhorse. Samaje Perine's no longer in town. I don't know if they trust the guys behind Mixon the way they trusted Perine. Why is he not a top 10 RB? I don't know why. I mean, again, it's the legal stuff. I know why. I just answered my own question, but if that stuff clears up going into the season, then Joe Mixon has definitely a path to be the number 1 overall RB on such a high octane offense. He had like a 5 touchdown game last season. So there is a universe in which he gets the ball in the red zone, and they keep giving him the ball in the red zone. And I know there's a lot of mouths to feed, so it's unlikely, but that's why there's a path, right? There's a small path. If Chase were to go down and the Bengals have to lean more on Mixon, I think, that's an unrealistic thing, but Chase has gotten injured. If T. Higgins goes down, that's another, a lack of talent that they then have to lean on the run game a little more. If the Bengals kind of take an approach this season where they're like, listen, we've had to rely a lot on Joe Burrow, Chase, T. Higgins. Why don't we lean more on the run game, have a more balanced offense, and that'll benefit Mixon. So again, it's if the legal stuff clears up is really the biggest factor. That's why I put Mixon in this list. I just think out of all these guys that he's around, he's just going to be on such a good offense. It's almost like you have to put him there by proxy, right? And then the next guy on this list is going to be a little bit spicy, but it's Jonathan Taylor. So Jonathan Taylor, again, he's experiencing contract issues, but he's already had an RB1 season under his belt. The Colts will be a rushing offense. There's no other way to say it. Whether it's Richardson, whether it's fucking, I don't even know. Who's the backup? Gardner Minshew? It doesn't really matter who it's going to be. They're going to be focusing on the run game. I think that's just how their team is built. Their personnel hasn't changed too much. They still have on paper, good offensive line. So Jonathan Taylor, one of the best I think he's better than Nick Chubb personally as like a runner. just because he's faster. That's the only thing. Nick Chubb probably has better vision, probably has better like cutback speed, but Jonathan Taylor's just so fucking fast. And if he can get over his ankle issues that he's been having, and solve the contractual dispute that he has with the Colts, and if they just use him the way he as a 3-down back the way he's been used, there's absolutely a ceiling. I might even put him, right next to Pollard. Basically, this category is like it was really tough for me to figure out, who to put up into the ceiling category. I just think there's like glaring issues, or like legal issues with Mixon and Taylor and Josh Jacobs, or not legal, but legal for Mixon, contractual for the other two guys. So those are some of the concerns, right? But that kind of wraps up this category. Now, in the low chance category, just so that I can wrap this video up and kind of speed through these names, it's pretty much, in my opinion, J.K. Dobbins, Travis Etienne, Rhamondre Stevenson. I want to put Aaron Jones, but I don't think it's possible. And I'll explain why. So, J.K. Dobbins will be on a better offense, right? Lamar Jackson just got paid. He's feeling motivated. J.K. Dobbins, another season to get healthy, and he should be the lead guy. I don't think they're going to be using Gus Edwards. He should be on a high-octane, high-powered offense, and he should be the workhorse for them. And because of that, simply because, again, by proxy, by default, he has the ability to be the RB1 if he just gets the touchdowns, right? If he gets the touchdowns, he can have one of those Jonathan Taylor-esque type seasons. It's super low chance because he doesn't have that same breakaway speed that Taylor has. I don't think he's going to get any receiving work, very little if he gets any. But he's not a bad receiving back, right? Like he could. There's a universe. Travis Etienne, kind of the same exact thing I just said for J.K. Dobbins, except take away any of the injury concerns. He should be on a high-octane offense. That should take another step forward. Calvin Ridley coming in. The offense should just be better as a whole. Trevor Lawrence hopefully takes another step. Travis Etienne should be like the first, second, and goal line back. Now, they really like Tank Bigsby, and they've been using him as kind of like a receiving back. But Travis Etienne, dude, in college was a great receiving back. So I think for a team that should be in closer games, more important games, and should be like, fighting for like a top playoff spot in the AFC this season, I can imagine them being like, let's stop fucking around. Let's just give the ball to Travis Etienne. He's one of our best playmakers. He's like the perfect makeup of a running back for like that pop off number 1 overall season, right? The season prior, he kind of had really good production. He was really efficient with his work. Started to trail off a little bit near the end of the season, but I can see them having an off season to refresh and really recalibrating their focus and having Etienne be a focal point. But again, low chance. A lot of other things would have to go his way. And Rhamondre Stevenson, also, I just think he's on too bad of an offense. And we know that Bill Belichick teams like to utilize like a scat back, a true receiving running back as a change of pace back. So Rhamondre could take over the first and second and goal line work, but I do think they bring in a guy repeatedly to kind of vulture him and to take the receiving work. And I think a lot of fantasy managers who kind of have like number 1 overall expectations for Rhamondre or hopes, I think they're going to be let down. I just think the offense as a whole won't be good enough. They just really don't have anyone on offense from a receiving point of view, right? It's like Mike Gesicki and Hunter Henry. It's Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm not too stoked about that. Tyquan Thornton, yeah, I don't know. I just think they're going to be struggling a lot as an offense. They're not going to be in scoring positions too often. Let's talk about these other guys real quick. Aaron Jones shares the backfield with A.J. Dillon. It'll be a stretch. Breece Hall coming off an ACL injury. That would be a massive, huge surprise if he were to be the number 1 overall RB. Miles Sanders should be a workhorse back, but he's just going to be on a bad offense where I don't think they're going to be in scoring position almost never. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Sanders to, outproduce being on such a bad offense. He's not a Derrick Henry type. He's not that talented to be able to put the team on his back. Same thing for Najee Harris. I just don't think the offense will be that great. I do think they're going to use Jalen Warren quite a lot as a complement to Najee. I think Najee Harris was effective in the past based on volume, and I don't know if he's going to get that same volume. And I don't, and even if he were to get the volume, I don't think he's going to have enough scoring. So that's the list, guys.